No problem.
Yo, what is up? Okay, okay, all right. What is up, guys? Welcome to a brand new video. This is a new series. I don't have a name for it yet, but it'll be a title, and then you'll see what it's called. But in this, we'll be talking to Hyena, and we'll be talking about a couple topics like mental health slash importance, like the effectiveness of the grind for Rainbow Six, and he's going to talk about his time here as a pro when he was a pro, and how what his routine was, bad days versus good days, effective practice, and a bunch of other topics. What's up, Hyena?
Hey man, how are you? Thanks for having me again.
Thank
It's
you.
been a while.
Yeah, how long has it
I
been?
think
A year?
almost a year, I would say. I think it was like right after the Vegas minor when I came on the first time. So like I was just barely starting to be a pro.
Yeah, it was literally a year, June 2019.
Yeah,
Yeah,
been a crazy year for sure.
yeah. Okay. We should start. Let's talk about your time and the schedules that were there when you were a pro in Luminosity. When you guys moved into the team house, what was an average day there like?
An average day was like it was different for me because I woke up a lot earlier than the rest of my teammates. But I would wake up, eat something. I would go to the gym, come back, just like kind of play ranked before practice, and then we'd start scrims around like 3, 4, 5 Pacific, and we'd go to like 8, sometimes 9, depending on the day. We had like a lot of freedom there because we didn't really have like I know a lot of like orgs now, like Dark Zero, and I don't know, maybe some other teams. They have like their management is very directly involved, watching them constantly. We were really like just like 6 20-year-olds, doing our we were grinding, but it wasn't like it didn't really feel like a job, even though we were scrimming as much as every other pro team. It didn't feel like a job so much as with us, and I think towards the end that kind of like might have made us like perform a little worse. But yeah, so that was the average day, and I would go to bed pretty early. I would go to bed like right after scrims.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess we can start there then. There's a lot of people who have different like ways they grind the game. I can share my personal thoughts really quick. I don't really believe I believe in working smart, not hard. And I think work
Hmm.
just playing the game like ranked or matchmaking overnight till maybe 7 the next morning or like 5 6 hours plus. In my opinion, not an effective way to get better. Because I think at some point, are you actually getting better, or are you just like doing it for the sake of doing it? What in your what was like the grind for you? Like, what is like your routine towards getting better? How much rank time did you feel is important for you?
Um, so I shared a pretty similar sentiment for a while, but I think like over time I came to learn that it really depends on the person and like the specific player. Um, some people play at their best when they are grinding the game as much as they can, when they're playing like 8, 10 hours a day, like practice, and then not with practice, with ranked, or you with T hunt or aim training. Some people like they thrive when their sole focus is siege, and I think other people thrive when they get like their time to mentally reset and they don't have to play the game constantly, like 12 hours a day. And I think I was definitely a player like that. Like I played out of practice. Like there are some players that are very good that don't play out of practice like at all. And I'll use like Vert for an example. To my knowledge, I don't know. Maybe it's different now. That Vert doesn't really play Rainbow Six outside of practice, and he's still like a phenomenal player. So he shows up for scrims. I'm sure he does his warm up, and he scrims, and that's really it. And then he goes and plays other games or does his thing, and it works for him. But then there's other players like I don't know. Let me use like Merc for an example. I'm like to my knowledge, Merc plays a lot of ranked outside of scrims. Like he plays the game a lot, and both great players. It works for them. And I think like I was more of an in between. I would play like a few rank games before practice. When 10 man's were a thing, I would try and play a few after. But I would never really grind late into the night that I see a lot of players doing. I like to go to bed early, and I felt like that it made me happy. And I think like if you feel good, you play good or you play well, and that's what worked for me. And some of my teammates were different. Like Rexon would play like till 3, 4 a.m. sometimes. He'd just be grinding ranked, and he's a really good player. So it definitely depends on the person. It depends on like your schedule. Obviously, like I'm just talking about pro players, but not everyone devotes like their whole time to Siege. So other people have like part-time jobs, they have school. So I think like the most important thing is finding what works for you.
Yeah, I think I can definitely relate to that. I know I have had days where I felt like I played too much ranked before practice and I couldn't necessarily focus during practice, or I played like almost too little like T hunts versus too little ranked. So I felt like I was like I had to it costed me like a map to warm up to the environment. I know in our DMs you spoke about being like laser focused during practice. Did you ever have challenges where you had challenges focusing during long hours of practice? Or how do you stay focused in it?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it goes for everyone. Like, you're not always going to be like laser switched on during practice. There are going to be days where you don't want to be there, and that, like, I think that goes for any job. Um, like there are, and even in college, like there are days where you don't want to go to class, but you go. You have to. Like, it's part of being disciplined. It's part of being like, you know, a professional, really a professional in like if you carry yourself as a professional, like there are days where maybe you didn't get enough sleep, maybe you just like feel like shit, maybe something's going on in your personal life, but you work through it, and even though like it might be affecting your play, you try your best to like stay objective, to stay calm and focused. But the fact of the matter is we're all human, and yes, I had a ton of days where I wouldn't want to go to practice, and whether I would like drink some caffeine to keep myself focused, or I would like I would go through like a meditation routine. um there were totally days where I just like was out of it, but you try and you stay disciplined. And I think that's the key. I think like the motivation, what people don't realize is motivation is not always going to be there. The desire to play the game 8 hours a day, especially like when you've done it for so long and you go through the process of becoming a pro, that motivation is not always going to be there. What carries you further is your discipline, is your ability to maintain a work schedule, to show up to practice on time. You know, that's what separates the players, that because when you're motivated, things come easy. You're showing up to practice, you want to get better, but when you've made some money playing the game and your motivation starts dwindling, and your interests are elsewhere, it's that discipline that keeps you getting better, keeps you sharp, keeps you winning. And in my opinion, that's like the most important trait a player could have, is discipline.
I think that's fascinating to me. I know these are some meditation towards their practice. How does meditation work for you? I think to a lot of people, meditation comes off as mystical, maybe even like more spiritual, so they shy away from it. I have tried it. I think I tried the Headspace app. They did not sponsor this, but I think they're the most popular one. And just try meditating before practice because I was watching a couple podcasts of some like the esports psychiatrist for the Team Liquid CS:GO team, and he was talking about how meditation helps certain people get more focused because it lets them be focused on the present. How has meditation helped you? Like, in what ways? Like, how long do you meditate for when you used to practice?
It was so like, yeah, like you were saying, I think a lot of people put a connotation on meditation like it's this like mystical thing where they like picture a monk in their head. It's really about just getting your head in the right space, your mindset in the right space, prior to like an important match, or like a practice when you're not like all there. For me, it was really just like sitting in my room and just like visualizing my goals and like visualizing what it's going to take to get there, and remembering that like this is part of the process. There are going to be days where I'm not 100% there, but it's kind of just like mentally preparing myself and like getting into the zone. And I think that's different for everybody. I mean, I'm not sure how Dark Zero does it, or anyone else who does it really, but for me it's just about mindset, getting myself in the right like mental space.
What about eating? Like, did you felt like you couldn't eat certain things before practice versus after? How much of your eating schedule factored into you playing good? Do you think?
um I typically like to eat healthy, but I think part of being a professional like gamer is, inherently unhealthy. You're sitting a large majority of the day. Um, and I think that's like conducive to like bad eating habits. And I think like like eating habits among pros vary wildly. I think it's again, it's really what works for you. And it's like you don't, in my opinion, you don't need to be physically fit to play, like to be a good player. But I think like certain players play better when they are physically fit, and I think I'm one of them. I think like when I have my fitness in order, when I'm, eating well, when I'm not like, of course there'd be days in the week where I would just like eat junk and like, but I would always feel worse on those days. And I think that, yeah, when I'd have like a streak of days where I'm eating well, working at like my workouts are going well, I would definitely feel better. And I think for me, the big thing is just like, look good, play well. And I would just like feel like mentally sharper when I was eating like good foods. But like I said, I think it's different for everybody. I don't think it's a necessity, especially in esports, to like that your diet needs to be perfect. You need to be in like physical condition because like there are plenty of examples of like, players who aren't, who are still amazing players. I think it's just different. It depends on the individual.
That's actually, yeah, I think I can relate to that. So, I think when I first started gaming hardcore, I didn't have any good eating habits, but I started swimming and like actually biking more recently, and it's like opened when I started swimming before practice. It was almost like going to the gym before practice. I can't explain what it does to me, but I feel like I think sharper was the word, and my reaction times, like I don't have to think so much. I don't feel as slow, and I think the same. I
Yeah,
can't eat like carby stuff before practice as well. I kind of have to like on days that I have practice, I don't eat stuff that would like make me feel heavy because they just slow me
yeah.
down in general.
Well, I mean, it's like a medical thing. If it's definitely proven that if you eat like a heavy meal before a game, your reaction time is going to be slower. You're going to feel sluggish. I think that's just for anything. Whether that's you're going to compete in like a basketball game. You're about to do. Oh, hang on. I think my mic just cut out. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So I think like if you obviously don't want to eat anything heavy before practice or before you're about to play, but like I think it's especially in esports, the diet thing is kind of loose in that regard. Like I know players that they would not eat at all on game day until after the game,
Oh
and that's
wow.
just their thing. They just felt like they played the best that way. For me, it was just yeah, not try not to eat like within 3 hours of a game. I would typically try to have like some sort of caffeine, whether it be like a coffee or a Red Bull before a game, just like so I'm there, I'm hyped, I'm focused, my energy is there. But it was nothing crazy. It's not, I didn't adhere to like a super strict diet or anything.
Okay. So effective scrum practice, and I think this is a topic I've discussed this topic with a bunch of pros, but I'd like to break it down a little bit more. Uh, Maybe we can get a little bit more detailed here. Can you give a possible example of we could like could role play it? Maybe as a teammate, you're going into practice. What is a goal you can work on? Like, what exactly is effective scrim practice versus just scrimming? I think a lot of T3 teams tend to scrim just because that's what you do when you're a team and don't have like any certain goals, both individual and team goals. I was wondering if you could speak more on that.
So I think when you start a team and you're not as familiar with the people that you're, teammates with, I think it's totally okay to scrim just to scrim. To just get reps in and like see how your teammates play, like see like who works well like in specific positions, who's like better at certain things, so you can kind of figure out rules. So I think that's like a huge misconception is that you like need to fucking dry run everything before you scrim. I think when you're starting out, it's okay to like do a few scrims just to scrim. But then once you get to like a professional level or like challenger league, I think you definitely need to scrim with a purpose. Whether it's you talk beforehand about what you want to improve on that day, whether it's coordination, whether it's like, oh, today, like, let's focus on burning utility. Like, make sure we burn the ADSs so we can get rid of like the Maestro cams. Like, specific things to work on, and just keeping that in the back of your mind while you're playing, so you're getting better at it. So it just comes as like a like second nature on a game. Uh, Beyond that, like that's really how we did it. Obviously I can't comment on other teams. I'm sure like different teams prep, different ways. It's just how it is. But definitely at the pro level, I can say like without a doubt that like pro teams are scrimming with a purpose. They're scrimming to get better in specific things. not just scrimming to scrim. I mean, maybe there are going to be some days where you're doing that, but you're definitely everyone's trying to looking to get better.
Okay. I think something I've been learning talk when I've been hearing other pros talk about new pro league teams coming into the scene is when you're playing in CL or the way you play is different from the pro league level. And I was curious because the way they emphasize the pro league play days type play style that's more strict on the fundamentals. CL might be more play heavy, like playmaking heavy. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like when you
Um,
guys became a team, did you have to start relearning some basic things to be strong at it to be able to like win in
I
games?
I don't think that's true. I think like when people are saying like like play styles in CL, there are teams in CL that are very strict with their play style, and like historically have been in every season of CL where they're very like fundamentally sound. They're step by step, and then there are teams that rely on playmaking a lot, and I think that's true in Pro League as well as in Challenger League. Like teams like United are, you watch them play and they're just like it looks like they're all over the place. They don't really like, in my opinion, know what they're doing, and that's just their style. And I think there are CL teams like that, and I think there are other pro teams like that. It just depends on a specific team's play style, how they feel that they want to be the most successful. um Everyone's playing with a certain style. Like everyone, like I feel like if you watch a player, you see their individuality bleed through in their style. And when you're teammates with someone, they're bouncing ideas off each other, that individuality is going to bleed to kind of make like a team vibe, if that makes sense, for lack of a better word. And they're going to play like a certain way because that's what they're used to, and that's how they think that they can be most successful. And I think in terms of my team, I think like we kind of went through like a process. I feel like we evolved when we first got into Pro League. We were definitely like more raw and wild, but I think we kind of refined that over time, like towards when we picked up Slash Hug, and we kind of got a little bit more, coordinated, but we still maintained that like, every once in a while you got to make a play. And I think, the best teams, like the very best in the world, know that it's a balance of both. You can't play a totally wild style, but you can't be too strict and too like y- y- too rigid, because I feel like you're not people aren't given enough freedom. And if you're not given enough freedom, like it's just people are going to take advantage of that. They're going to find an angle to beat you if you're not adapting, if you're not, you know keeping them on their toes.
So I have a question about that because the last time you were on this podcast, it was 92 Dream Team, and what fascinated me was the fact that I found that as a support player, I found it very intriguing how you were the support player for such an aggressive team. I felt, but I felt like yeah, you guys did dial it back down as time went down. Was it a challenge for you or for the team to dial it back down? Was it something that took a bit in practice to figure out? And what does dialing it down even like necessarily mean? Because I think in the first couple games you guys were quite wild, catching people off guard. But at some point, the pro league teams probably caught up. Did you guys realize at that point that you had to?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it was. Is that other pro teams caught on and they realized like what we were doing, and I think naturally people are going to adjust. It's a game of milliseconds and adjustments. So we saw that, and so we have to in turn adjust our play style, and it's also meta changing. You know, Back then when we first made Pro League, like it, the game was a lot different than it is now. You didn't have to clear as much bullshit. Um, Now it's gotten ridiculous. Like to when I'm kind of like glad I'm not playing. Like you got to clear WAMIs, ADSs, and then there's going to be these new ops, Malusi and Ace, where it's like sound base and it slows you down, all this like new trap meta. um I think like the word that people were describing it towards the end of last season, the like 30-second meta where all the attacks are taking place in the last 30 seconds, like that's going to become very prevalent, especially when I know they just shelved Echo because the devs, like I don't know what's wrong with, like, Ubisoft has this tendency to mess up things that were working fine in previous seasons, and somehow like they'll make an update and just break something that worked fine. um, so I guess when they bring him back and he's not auto banned, it's just one more thing to clear, and it's just gonna make the game a mess to attack with. And I think that was also a big part of why we had to shift our play style to be less gunfight heavy and more coordinated, is because that's how the game worked then. You can't really like make plays like that anymore, where Rexon or I could just run in and like get a 2-piece, 3-piece, because there's like so much shit to deal with now. There's maestro camps calling you out. There's echoes. There's legion traps. There's all the new utility. There's Wamais. You can't like flash someone out of a position, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And you guys had a couple additions to the team that I think fascinated me. Everyone I have had on the podcast who's played with Jarvis has said great things about the amount of communication he brings to the team and how he helps the teams with their executes. Like, what did you think about Jarvis on the team for that short period?
I like Jarvis a lot. I think he's a great friend of mine. I got along with him really well. I think in terms of communication, yeah, he's probably like, in my opinion, one of the best in the world. He definitely did make our comms better. I think that a lot of people like to bring up his performance, and what people don't realize is that he was only with us for a short time, and while he was with us was like while we were going through the trouble of like talking to Ubisoft, talking to LG, with all like we didn't know if we were going to be even playing next season. So a lot of players on the team, like, motivation was like dwindling. It was kind of a weird time, so our practice wasn't as efficient and effective as it would have been had we known that, like, okay, we're gonna have a job next season. We're gonna be able to play next season. So I think he kind of joined. He like came into like a mess of a team, in terms of our mindset and our motivation, and it then definitely his performance wasn't like all his fault. I think people were giving him a hard time for that. So yeah, I mean, I love Jarvis. I think he's a great player. I think his team, he's a great tendency to like take ownership over problems that are going on, and he likes to find solutions to those problems, and that's a great trait to have as a player. He's a problem solver. He's going to solve whatever issues they're having, find a solution for it, and keep going. And I think like any teams he joins, their comms are instantly going to get better because he's very like OCD about it. And I think in that like instance, it's a good thing to be OCD about, because like if your comms are sharp, then your teammates are going to know that much quicker where someone is, and they're going to be able to react like a little bit faster. And at the end of the day, it's a game of milliseconds. So.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sort of curious now because I think it was a bit of a shock to people that Thomas was removed from the roster. He'd played you. Was there any? I'm not sure if it was internal reasons. If it was drama related, I'm not super interested. But was there like why was the if it wasn't drama related, why was he removed?
It wasn't really drama. It was more like it was just personal issues within the team. Kind of like, so I guess you could say drama, but I mean, we all like respect Thomas. I think Rexon and Tommy they're teaming together again now, and I mean, I always respected Thomas. I think he's a great player. I think I don't think it's my place to comment on uh, the reasonings behind it, but there was a lot of like it was a lot of just like personal issues within teammates. Specifically as to why Thomas was replaced by Slash. It
Okay.
came down to like personal issues, and at the end of the day, people don't realize like we were like five essentially teenagers put in a house with no supervision. LG did not send anyone to live with us. They did not check up on us. It was all left to us. None of us had ever been on a pro team before. We were kind of figuring it out as we went along, and it forced a lot of us like, for me, I felt like I had to like step up to be like a leader a lot of times, when I'm 21 now. At the time I was like I was 20, and I've like it kind of felt like I was in a college dorm room. I was with like five other people my age, and everyone came from varying backgrounds. We didn't come from the same place. Like, we came from all over the US, and inevitably people aren't going to get along, and I think that was a big reason why Thomas, the situation happened how it did.
Okay. I think a lot of people who want to play at a professional level dream of a team house. What would you say are the cons to living in that space?
I think team houses are beneficial if they're done correctly. I think the cons of a team house, just speaking from my experience, were Sometimes you don't always have the personal space that you would want. You know, when you're on a team and everyone doesn't live together, and say you have a bad day of practice, okay, well, you know, you talk about it, you log off, and you go do your thing, and you can mentally unwind. You know, if you're in a team house and like for whatever reason you're just not getting along with a player on your team that day, like they're next to you, they're sitting next to you, you're living in the same house, like you go to the kitchen, you know, you're going to see them, like you're interacting together. So but I think like that being a con is also a pro because it forces you to deal with your issues. You can't run away from them. You can't like put an issue you have off with your teammate, um, as you could if you weren't living together. Just like, you know, okay, I'm just going to leave TeamSpeak and just not deal with it, which I think people could do in the past, and I've seen that happen. Whereas when you're living together, it's kind of like, okay, well, I don't want it to be awkward in the house. I don't want there to be like this like weird fucking confrontational, you know, thing going on. So you address the problems, then you move on. So I feel like it forces you to mature. And I think going into team houses a lot, like the fact of the matter is, the reality is, a lot of, especially now, and people are going to realize that moving to Vegas, like these newer pro teams like Tempo Storm, United, a lot of them have never lived with other people. And I feel like a lot of them have never gone through like confrontation. And I think it's going to be like a rude awakening for them. It's going to be a reality check. Like you can't say the shit that you say online in real life. Like it's just not going to work that way. And a lot of people are going to be forced to mature. And then other cons, you know, it just depends on how it's done. Like it depends on who you're living with. Like people are, you know, you if you leave something out, like people are might you might get your, you know, your food eaten or something, depending on how you like make an agreement with your teammates. But that's all little stuff. That's just like living with other people.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think it fascinates me that I think a team house sounds like a dream to me because living with your teammates and getting to practice. Does it elevate practice during scrims? Being around your teammates, does it actually compare to being online? Like now that we've spoken on the
Yes.
cons, I
Yeah,
think
it definitely elevates practice for sure because you're like you you're forced to be held accountable. You know, where like if it's online, if a teammate doesn't want to practice that day or something's going on, like they could bullshit. Not saying anyone would, but like they could say, "Oh, I have this going on," and you really can't call them out on something. You know, they could just like make something up or say something that I have this, I can't practice today. Whereas if you're in a team house, like everyone's forced to be accountable, and I think most people are. Once you're in pro league, they're just gonna, it's their job, so they're gonna be accountable. But it's just that much more in a team house. You know, if it's 5 o'clock and everyone's sitting at their desk and it's not like you have a scrim and someone's not like there at their desk, okay, well you know that they're not there and they're slacking, and you can call them out on that.
okay.
Um,
Do you have any more?
No, that's pretty much it. And then it's just, it's like I said, it's the accountability thing, and you know, everyone's forced to be a little more mature because you're face to face. Like if you have an issue with someone, if like you two weren't getting along in practice, you're just going to talk about it.
All right. Yeah. So I plan for this to be a short series. I'm not gonna try dragging much longer. I'm curious what you are up to. If people want to know what you're up to right now with your band.
Uh, you want me to like lay that out, like what happened,
No,
or?
just like what you're up to right now.
Oh, okay. I haven't really been gaming that much. I've just been, you know, training. I've been really into like getting back into MMA again. Like the gyms are opening up here in California, and hopefully they'll stay open. But if not, it is what it is. I have some equipment in my garage. I've just been, you know, like my passions are elsewhere right now. And not so like people ask me if I'm going to come back in a year if my when my band's like up. I don't know. The answer is I really don't know. I'm just like following what my passions are right now, and you know, I'm really interested in this stuff. I've been watching fights a lot, training whenever I can, and that's where my passions are. I play Valorant a little bit, not really competitively, but just like to, you know, whenever I have some downtime. But in terms of Siege, I haven't really been playing that much. I made a new account just to see how like the new season is, but I mean I don't like play a ton on it. I just play with friends whenever you know they're on. But yeah, that's really just what I've been up to.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on this episode and talking about that. It's always amazing, I think, to hear about routine, to learn from either the mistakes you guys made for other aspiring pros, or just to like conversate and talk about things that you went through as a pro. And look forward to having you on future episodes sometime.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me again.